So I got a bit of an issue with the Blazer now. Let's fire this thing up. She's a sputtering, blowing black soot. Fuel pressure is irregular. Here's my problem. See how fast that pressure bleeds down? It should be holding at like 62 pounds in that ballpark, and it continues to drop more and more and more. And it's not leaking at the Schrader valve I'm testing either. That means that I've got an issue with my injector. This is a Vinco W, so it's got the central port injection system on it. I've already done this once before. It's not a hard task. Start by disconnecting electrical connectors, like on this damper. Take off the manifold, pressure sensor, harness, the idle air control valve, plug, throttle position sensor comes off. Let's see what else we get in the way. Throttle cable has to come out as well. That's easy by taking these bolts off, which you got to remove anyway. Take off the intake itself. Coil mount comes off. You pull off the bolts all the way around the perimeter of the plenum, and then the plenum opens up. So let's see what we've got inside. It's almost like I've done this before. For those of you that have never removed this before, you're going to need to get yourself an 8mm deep socket is helpful, and a 10mm deep socket. Remove everything on the top end of the manifold that you can find. You're going to find a series of longer style bolts and two shorter bolts. These two go toward the rear on either side of the distributor, so they're easy to kind of keep tabs on. Disconnect your electrical connectors for this plenum. Remove the throttle body bracket, and some of you may have also cruise control cables. They're very easy to remove. Let's see, that throttle cable just wraps around and fits into a hole on the throttle blade. Comes off super easy. My coil mount is part of that block, so that's off now. And everything should be out of the way. I'm just going to relocate some of the wiring here to pull it out of the road so it does not get in my pathway here of destruction. See all the puddled fluid in there? That's fuel. So we're going to turn the key on in a second here and see where this leak is at. I'm just going to pull this vacuum line off. It's a little bit stubborn at this moment. We are inside the intake manifold. I'm going to prime it without starting it because that's a bad idea. Then we're going to see exactly if we can spot where this leak is coming from. It's leaking inside the plenum, so it could be the line set, which is, this is the line kit. I think they call it a line nut kit or something, but it bolts onto this fuel block at the back of the manifold, and it comes into the actual injector itself. Now I did replace these the last time when I did my original replacement with the original video of this. I broke part of my intake gasket just now, but that's quite alright. It's going to be replaced anyways. You don't tear this apart without changing something like that. See if we can spot the fuel leak. Dropping down, but from where I don't know. I'm going to do a little bit more digging here just with without the camera so I can at least see what's going on. Those of you that know what this is know what's about to happen, or what has happened. So I tore her apart. It's super clean inside my plenum, but that's probably because I was spraying quick start into it. I was trying to troubleshoot why I had issues with a couple of the cylinders firing, and that's where I was getting led to. Anyways, my pressure when I crank when I turn the truck on and prime the pump, I reach about 60 psi, which is about running, which is where it should be. As soon as the key goes off, my pressure drops quickly, which means the pressure's going somewhere. So coming in here, these are the nylon lines. Now mine were replaced not too long ago, so they still have some flex to them. So I was actually able to squeeze them with pliers and watch what the pressure gauge was doing. What I suspect the issue here is, I think the fuel pressure regulator on this unit has gone and failed me. So I'm going to be opening that up and physically replacing it with a new one. I just placed the order for the part and it should be in tomorrow morning, so then I'll be all set. I got to just track down a security Torx driver in order to physically remove it because I don't have one small enough. The one I have closest is a, I don't know, whatever this fella is. Not small enough. So I'm going to buy a set, maybe just a hand driver set, and then I'll have an assortment of them. It's come across that problem before, so I'm also going to order a intake manifold gasket for this, and we'll get that replaced at the same time. So hopefully we should be ready to rock in about a second here. Well, it doesn't take me very long to rip apart this intake manifold. It's something I've done a couple of times now, unfortunately. I have replaced the spider injector previous, probably 6 or 7 years ago at this point now. So it's certainly been in there for a while, not for very long of a distance, because shortly after the initial repair was when I started the engine rebuild, and since that it hasn't been driven very much. So I think I have narrowed down the issue here, and hopefully I'm correct. I think the regulator inside of the actual spider injector has gone bad. And doing the quick YouTube searches in Google, I was able to find a video of somebody actually replacing the pressure regulator itself, and that it's available for purchase. So I called my parts store nearby. I told them what I'm looking for. They were able to find one. They've got it ordered for me and it'll arrive tomorrow, which will be today for you guys. So I'm going to try to install this thing. Hopefully everything goes smooth, and let's see if I can't get a better result from this truck. So my symptoms. I was driving down the road and all of a sudden it sputtered a little, started to run kind of rough. I pushed on the brakes hard and I had no vacuum at all, so I had no power brakes. I got to the corner, and by the time I slowed down, the truck just stalled, so I put it onto the shoulder of the road, was able to start it back up, turned around and drove home, and it basically limped back down the road, ran real rough, so it's blowing black smoke out of the tailpipe. I assume that's a super rich condition. I did my engine light check because I did finally get one on. All it was telling me was a misfire. I pulled plugs. I pulled plug wires off of spark plugs to try to figure out which cylinder was misfiring, and I couldn't narrow it down. It seemed that with cylinder number 1, 3, and 5, it didn't matter what I did or tried, I could not get them to fire. I even tried clamping a new spark plug to the chassis of the truck with the wire hooked up, and it would spark just fine. I did change 3 of the spark plugs on that side because of this reason. I was thinking maybe I somehow have an ignition issue. I did check my cap and rotor, and I found that the button on my cap was worn down, so I purchased a new cap, new rotor, and installed those. Of course, nothing happened. It still was causing me troubles. So we're hoping that it's going to lead to this fuel issue, and if that's everything that it is, then we'll go for a test drive here shortly. Removing the pressure regulator is super easy once you've got the right Torx. It's a T15 security Torx, and the pressure regulator comes right out. There's two O-rings on it. One sits up higher on the base and one is down low. And then there's this plastic filter as well that has to come out. The smaller O-ring of the two was stuck inside my injector, so I had to make sure that I pulled that out. But I've got my replacement right here. So the replacement is just going to be the reverse of the install. I'm going to put a bit of engine oil on those gaskets, or on those O-rings, and then I'm going to gently press them into place and make sure everything fits like it should. Okay, I've got some clean engine oil. So that's all oiled up now. Looks like it's almost seated all the way. I got to get the clamp and the screws. So this is the clamp from the original regulator. Perfect. Good, the gap is totally gone and it's tight. So I'm going to get this back in to the intake. We're going to hook up some fuel lines and do a pressure test. Okay, so the injector drops right back into a slot that it fits here. And then I've got my two fuel lines that have to be fed in. Now in some cases these lines may need to be replaced. They get very brittle as they get older. Mine were replaced when I did the injector last time, and it hasn't been that long, so mine still have a lot of flexibility to them, which is definitely good. I'm going to put a bit of oil on those O-rings for those fuel lines and then push them in all the way. Once I get them pushed in all the way, then this retainer slides on as a clamp, fits into those slots on the fuel lines and holds everything in place. Okay, so both those fuel lines pushed right into the injector. Oh, they've got a, let's see here. That's it. I'm going to, let's see here. I'm not going to snap all my injectors in because I do want to see if one of them is stuck open. So they're going to stay out. But now I should be okay to actually pressurize the fuel system and check further for any leaks. So I'm going to reinstall the connector for the injector. Okay. And I should be able to hit the key and prime this thing, and we can see what the fuel test gauge says. Still got bleed down pretty quick. It looks like it's holding more pressure than it had before. So I'm kind of scratching my head now. It still drops pressure after it's primed, which isn't good. But it's not leaking from the injector anywhere, so that probably means it's leaking back into the tank. I think there's a one-way valve, like a check valve, on the pressure line. That's what I suspect is doing it. Up here at the injector, if I pinch the return line, the fuel pressure doesn't change at all. But if I pinch the supply line, then the fuel pressure changes. I can show you actually real quick here what I'm talking about. So this is the return, and as I pinch it, nothing changes. If I pinch the supply line, that's where I get a variation. So based on that, I've got pressure up to the injector, but it's failing, and it's not failing from the injector. So it's got to be fuel pump related, because I don't have a fuel leak. And now that that regulator is new, I can confirm that it's not bleeding back. By coincidence, it's holding pressure longer than it was yesterday, but I don't know what that means. So I think it's fuel pump. I'm going to put the manifold back together. I got a new gasket on it. And I'm going to torque it down to what the book says for spec. I got to look that up. And then we're going to try starting it and see if we've got any bit of an improvement. I'll be surprised. I think I'm going to have to get this up on the ramps, do a fuel filter to start with, check again the fuel pressure, and if there's still no improvement, then it's going to be dropping the tank and going from there. But at least I'm almost out of gas this time. Normally it's full. Okay, so I'm ready to torque down the plenum here. If you've got the Haynes repair manual for the truck, go to page 4-7, look at torque specifications, CPI air intake plenum fasteners. They're to be torqued to 124 inch-pounds. So grab your torque wrench and get to torquing. I'm going to work on that right now. Well, I've got her all stabbed back together, less the Vortec decorative cover. That's the only piece I haven't put on yet. I'm gonna put the key in, I guess, and we'll give it a whirl. I did leave my pressure gauge connected because I'd like to see where the pressure, or what it's doing, at least when it's running. Let's see. It's gonna run like shit. Same problem.